I'd like to introduce to you the Manatee County Supervisor of Elections, Mr. Scott Farrington.
Okay. I do have a little PowerPoint that Mark's going to get together, but before he does that, I just want to take a minute and thank everybody in here. I know a lot of you helped me on my campaign in a lot of different ways, and I think most of you might have even voted for me, but I won't ask. So as I was preparing this, I was debating whether or not to do a PowerPoint, and every time I started to sit down and put it together, I got sidetracked or pulled away, and so I almost didn't do a PowerPoint. But as I was going through, I looked, and almost exactly, well, a year ago was the last time I was here, January of 2024, January 2nd, actually. So I was like, hey, I'll pull that PowerPoint, and we'll see if you notice any differences. We good? All right. So, all right. So this is the first slide, and you may not be able to read that at the bottom, but at the bottom left it says Scott Farrington, Chief of Staff, January 2nd, 2024. That's the last time I was here. So I figured I could just go through and make a couple little quick edits. I'm no longer Chief of Staff. It's January 21st, 2025. So a year later, what has happened in the last year? What hasn't happened in the last year? So, but this is, obviously from here I kind of edited, but Supervisor of Elections is a constitutional officer. They're elected to 4-year terms. They are not under the county commission, but I do get my funds from the county commission, so there's definitely a check and balance there, and we have to play nice with each other. And I was sworn in for my first term on January 7th, 2025. So, so be kind to me. I've only been in the office for like 2 weeks. Going through just kind of a brief. Last year we compared to actually 2013 to 2024, but for a year, what has changed? The county as a whole is 7.5% larger as far as voter registration. We now have as of today, 285,139 registered voters. Yeah. If you look at the party breakdown, the Republicans, has grown, but percentage-wise has just grown a little bit. You look at others, they pretty much stayed the same percentage-wise, and Dems have dropped just a little bit. So in the last year, you don't see a huge shift in parties. There is a growth. Keep that 7.5 or 7.4 increase in mind. As we look at the state as a whole, how has it grown? It's grown by about 5%. So Manatee County's growth is about 50% greater than the county or the state as a whole over the year. And if you look at the party breakdown, Florida as a whole is one of about 9 states currently that has more no party affiliation voters than one of the other 2 parties. So if I take that back. And there are about 9 states that no party affiliation has gone past one of the other parties. Florida is not there yet, but as you can see, they're kind of working their way to that. And I said this last time, as of 2 years, it's only been 2 years where there's been more registered Republicans in Florida than Democrats. It has not been that long. Looking at voting methods over the last 3 presidential elections. I won't read all of this out to you, but there's a couple of things I'm going to point out. And the first one is if you look at vote by mail, there were approximately 69,000 vote by mail ballots in 2016. That jumped to 105,000 in 2020, and it dropped down to 70,000 in 2024. So vote by mail has, is back to where it was around 2016. Now, There are probably a few reasons for that. One of them, of course, was COVID. COVID in 2020 bumped vote by mail. But the truth is, the incline of vote by mail had been increasing for a long time. And it was a little bit of a surprise to me that it dropped this much. And I think there's two reasons. One we're going to talk about a little bit more. One of them was there's just for the last couple of years, there's been hesitation or mixed signaling from the Republican Party on whether vote by mail is good or bad. And then there's been mixed signaling depending on who you talk to. So I think that had an effect. I think the other part of it is vote by mail. The requirement for vote by mail has changed. It changed in 2022 that you have to request a vote by mail before every election cycle to get that mail. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. The other number I wanted to point out, if you look at the change in registered voters between 2016 and 2020, it's pretty substantial. It's about 40,000 people. If you look at the change between 2020 and 2024, much less substantial. It's only about 8,000 people. So a really big jump between 2016 and 2020, a much smaller jump between 2020 and 2024. And again, I want you to keep that in mind because we're going to really soon, right now, talk about what may have caused that. The first is newish list maintenance. And I say newish because this started for the first time, it was passed into law in 2022. The first time it was done was in 2023. And that is a new list maintenance activity that every supervisor of elections has to do, where if you have not voted in the last 2 general elections, we send you a piece of mail. And that piece of mail basically says, you must respond to this or we are going to remove you from the rolls. Now, there's a little bit more of a process around that. So 2022 was the first time that happened. And in Manatee County, about 25 to 30,000 people went from an active status to an inactive status. So it dropped our rolls by about 25 to 30,000 people between 2023 and 2024. We're getting ready to do that again. So what that level is going to be, I don't know. We have really high turnout. I don't think it's going to be 30,000 this time, but it's going to be 10 or 15,000 again, probably. So I think it has done a couple of things. One is, I think in general, it's a very good thing because it gets our rolls cleaner. When people move, they don't tell us. When you moved from whatever state you came from, and I'm saying that because most of you came from another state. There's almost nobody in here that's from Florida. Okay, 5 of you. But when you moved from New Jersey or Ohio, the first thing on your mind wasn't, oh, I need to make sure that they know I moved so that they remove me from the voter rolls. Same thing happens in Florida. If you move from Florida to another state, the first thing on your mind is that I need to make sure that Florida knows that I'm no longer a voter there. So this is a method that we can more quickly get those cleaned up, get them off of the rolls. It happened before, but it took a much longer period. So there was a little bit more dead weight on the rolls. And so going back to that, I think that's also one of the reasons the jump between 2020 and 2024 was not as high, because in 2023, like I said, about 25 to 30,000 got pulled off that rolls. Some of those, of course, got back on. There was also more people, so it ended up at around 280,000. But without that, I think it would have been very close to 295 to maybe even 300,000. That guess can't prove it, but it would definitely be higher. The other thing that is affected by that is if you look at the bottom, the total turnout percentage, 82%, which is a record. This was a record turnout percentage, which is good, and I'm not trying to take that away. But if you put some of that extra dead weight on there, it wasn't quite as good as it would have otherwise been. How many of you heard that the governor called a special session? Right? The focus on that special section is immigration, but there's a couple other things that he brought up, the governor brought up. One of them being initiative petitions. Initiative petitions are how 4 of the 6 amendments got on the ballot last year. Marijuana, abortion, and those were the 2 biggest ones. A couple others also got on there by initiative petition. No one knows exactly what is going to happen, but the belief is that is a focus. Even if it doesn't happen in the special session, it's going to be brought in the regular session to change how that works. I've heard all sorts of things. The onus for calling it or bringing it up in the special session was mostly the abortion amendment.
Amen.
What's that?
Amen.
And the Office of Elections, Crimes and Securities did some studies and research and found that there were some fraudulent petitions that were gathered. In the end, they did not get the initiative petition taken off the ballot, but they want to make changes to stop those fraudulent petitions from being collected and being accepted, and for these initiatives to get on there by using the fraudulent method. Now, understand, an initiative petition, it takes a lot of initiative petitions to get signed across the state in order to get on the ballot. Is this working? Okay. Okay. And so, right now, it's around 900,000 petitions across the state it takes to get on the ballot. Both the marijuana and the abortion amendment, people paid a lot of money to get those petitions. And I mean a lot of money, like in the $20 to $30 million range, in order to get enough petitions to get it on the ballot. And the way they do that is they pay people to go collect the petitions. And so there's different ways you do that. But anytime, if I say, hey, Mark, I'll give you $1 petition, and it's more than $1 petition, but I give you $1 petition. 100 petitions a day, that's not too bad. 1,000 petitions a day is a lot better, right? So the incentive structure for that can lead to people taking shortcuts. And some of those shortcuts are illegal, and some of those shortcuts are unethical, and that's what they're trying to weed out. How they're going to do that, I have no idea. I've heard all sorts of rumors, one of them being that every petition has to be signed must come into a supervisor of elections office and sign it in front of a deputy supervisor and show their ID. I sure hope that doesn't happen, because I don't know how we would make that work. But that has been an idea that's been floated, and it would eliminate the fraud. I absolutely believe that, but I really don't know how we would do that. Like I said, 1 million across the state. Manatee County probably did 30 to 40,000 of them. I don't know where we would get that many, that space to bring, but so we'll see. Like I said, I've heard that idea. I don't know that'll be I don't know that that'll be implemented. Other ideas is requiring more identification on the petition, either a driver's license number or the last 4 of your social, things that are a little bit harder for someone. Like right now, you can just, right now on a petition, all it requires is your name, your date of birth, an address, a signature. Date of birth is pretty easy to find. People get those lists, and we have found, and some of them aren't that smart, honestly. They give them to us alphabetically, and A, Adams, and Alex, and they're obviously all filled out by the same person. They try and scribble it a little differently, but it becomes very obvious very quickly. But if someone is a little smarter and spreads it out across, a bunch of groups or even a bunch of counties, it becomes a lot harder to find. But point being, initiative petitions could be changing the way that they're collected. Vote by mail. I told you the law was passed in 2022 that after every December, after every election, your vote by mail request is canceled and you have to make a new one. So what that means is right now, currently on our files, we have 1,449 vote by mail requests. And that went from 90,000 down to this. Now, I'm guessing in this room, there's probably quite a few people that are like, yes, that's great. I hate vote by mail. I want it to go away, right?
Feels like a good thing.
There's problems logistically. There's also problems. I'm going to go back to this slide with turnout. That vote by mail number, that 70,000, I think that's another reason that the vote by mail number is lower. And not necessarily as much in the general, but definitely in the primary. The primary turnout was about 25% overall, which is low. A little low at least. And normally it's in the 25 to 30-ish percent. There are a lot of people that don't know primaries are going on until that vote by mail shows up in their hands. So I believe that the lack of vote by mail actually pushed that turnout a little lower than it would have been. Now you can make the argument if they didn't even know the election was happening, you know, what's their interest and involvement level? But I do believe that vote by mail does increase turnout in primaries, not necessarily in generals, but definitely in primaries. However, for us as an office, the biggest problem is there are still a lot of people that want to vote by mail, whether you like it or not. Right now, it's legal, and we have to provide it. These people don't understand that their vote by mail request is canceled, so it takes us a lot of time and money to make sure that they know if you want to vote by mail, you have that right. It is legally your right to do so, but you got to sign up again. So it's gonna be an effort. The other thing, unintended consequences, if you will, it didn't really affect Manatee County, but Congressional District 1, Congressional District 6, they have special elections. Those special elections are happening right now. All of those vote by mail requests dropped off. So now, for instance, Brevard County is I was just at a conference and was talking to someone. Brevard County, it's on the other side of the state. They're in Congressional District 6. They went from, like, in that district, like 30,000 vote by mail requests to 600.
Wow.
So what is that going to do for a special, because the timing on it, it's hard to get them to know. It's a special election. Special elections are notoriously low turnout. I mean, like talking like 10 to 15%. So without the vote by mails, where people don't even have a clue that it's happening in that vote by mail. So I understand a lot of people don't like it, but it does. There are challenges that come with this, and I'm not saying I think that that law is going to change or it even should change, but just trying to explain some of the logistical problems that happen. Here's it. As I was sitting there, I was thinking about other things that you might want to hear about. One of them is, so this is the end of the slide, and I'll go to the next one. And I'm sure you have questions because I know you guys. But I am going to touch on a couple other things real quick. Going through the 2024 election cycle on the outside as a candidate gave me some perspectives that I did not have. So there are some things that we're looking at, specifically precincts, precinct locations, precinct sizes, equipment, the amount of equipment at certain locations. Like there were a handful of precincts that had some lines. Not a ton, but there were a few. And then early voting, locations on early voting, how the layouts are set up, things like that. So that is something that we're going to reevaluate. And we normally do every off cycle. We look at all of that, but I have a little different perspective now. The website. The website went down a bit, as you may or may not have known, during the primary on election night. It was down for like 2 or 3 hours, and I was one of them that was sitting there. What happened? So we will be. As a matter of fact, that the company that most of the supervisor of elections in the state had used for the website said we're not doing this anymore, which is fine because we were going to move anyway. So the website will be getting redone here in the next few months. We're going to move it to another location. So keep that, keep a lookout on that. We're going to, of course, try and modernize it a little bit, make it a little prettier and a little more usable. Citizenship has become an issue mostly at the federal level. And the Secretary of State Byrd, the governor, and several people have been pushing at the federal level to make more information available to the people that are trying to make the decisions about citizenship and registration. And I think that will go through this time. So it passed the House last time, did not pass the Senate. And I have a feeling that some version of that will go through this time because the makeup has changed. And so, honestly, we're looking forward to that. The more information we can have, I don't think there's a supervisor in Florida that's going to say we want to register non-citizens. The problem has always been getting good, accurate information to make the determination about citizenship. And of course, the 2026 election is a lot closer than you think it is. And it's going to be 2024 was interesting. 2026 is going to be another one. You're going to have an open governor seat. There's already people vying on both parties saying there's a lot of interest. In Manatee County, there's going to be at least one open House representative seat, probably one Senate seat, state Senate. So, and who knows, and then there's all the other, chief financial officer, attorney general, all this stuff that goes along with that we're not even really, we think we probably know who the new attorney general is going to be. We're not sure who the new chief financial officer is going to be. So, there's some interest shaping up. So we're always, as soon as one election's done, we're moving on to the next. And so that's already our focus. Yes?
This started out with your special session. And when is that?
Yeah, the special session, I'll be honest, I don't remember the date. It's
Well, they're not in session until March, April.
their regular session is March. The governor called for a special session, and I want to say it was the end of January. I don't remember the exact date. Yes, yes. So it's been called. I don't know that it's actually. I'm a little weak on this. I know the governor calls a special session, but I know that the Speaker of the House and the Senate President get together and create the agenda for the special session and then actually set the time frame of it. I haven't heard that part's happened yet, but the idea was to have it very, very quickly.
Hey, one more. Randy Fine, you know Randy?
Not personally.
Okay. Well, he's running for a congressional seat now. As a poll came through, it could be in the, I guess, what is, he's running for? He's running. Yeah, Randy was just elected to the Senate, the Florida Senate. And then Trump pulled him over and said, we want you to run for, what you call it?
Congressional District 6, I believe.
Yeah. And because Randy was working with the Bill, he's a really busy guy. And my real question was, how does that work out in your area? Because there's going to be an election. How does that work through your system?
Well, Manatee County has been spared any special elections. The way it generally works, we'll take that seat. The congressman got pulled to Washington. Trump appointed them. So then other people want to run for that new open seat. Randy Fine was one of them. Randy Fine was in the state legislature, so his seat now becomes open. So they call a special election. So they call the special election for the congressional district 6 or seat, and then they'll call a special election for his Randy Fine seat, but not until he officially resigns. He does not have to officially resign until he takes office, or would take office.
They're particular time span, a couple months, or is it just up to Randy?
No, it's not up to Randy. He has to resign. He has to submit his resignation immediately, but it doesn't have to take effect until he would take his new office. Whether or not he takes the office, he has to resign as of that time. So his office, and I haven't checked, it's not my area, so I didn't really pay attention. I'm not sure when his effective resignation date is. Before April 1st? Okay, so his seat isn't technically open until April 1st, so the governor probably won't call the special election until April 1st, and usually it's about 90 days after, give or take. It can be as close as 60, but usually it's around 90, because it has to have a primary and a general. And each of those have to be a minimum of 45 days apart. Ideally, it's a little more than that. So it's a step process. And the thing is, this has happened across the state, just not in Manatee County. When one gets elected or gets moved, then there's an open seat, and other people's move into that. And then there's some county commissioners now that are going to run for Randy Fine's seat, and then the county commission is going to have an opening. So it kind of can snowball down the road.
Are you kind of praised for that because you're?
I am for our area, and right now it has not affected anything in our area.
Oh, okay. Bill?
Yes.
I voted through the mail from Michigan in early October.
Okay.
Within 10 days, I got an email from your office saying that there was a question about my ballot, and was it really me? And would I come in to the county and the office of 301 and verify my signature? Yes, I will. The very next day, I got another email saying, oh, forget about that, it's all fixed. And I don't know what happened. Does that mean someone had voted in my stead, and when I showed up, it was a problem, or?
So I'm at a slight disadvantage. I wasn't there during that time frame, but I can tell you the way that process normally works, right? If we get a vote by mail in the office and there's a question about a signature, instantly a letter it's automatic. A letter is printed, sent to the voter, and that letter basically says, we have this question. There's an affidavit attached to that letter. Please fill out this affidavit, provide certain pieces of identification like a driver's license or something else to prove that it was you. And you're signing that affidavit saying, yes, I received the ballot and I sent it back, and this is me, to fix it. That letter has never in the past asked the voter to come into the office. So if it specifically said come into the office, I'm guessing it wasn't from us. The other thing that happens is other entities, mostly the parties, get that information as well, and they create their own letters or they make their own phone calls, and sometimes the information is a little different or the instructions are a little different. But I doubt it was somebody else voting on your behalf. What likely happened is there's also stages, and one person looks at the signature and says there's a question on it, and then it goes to a supervisor. And that supervisor then says, no, this is them, or no, there is indeed a question. My guess is that letter, and I also know, again, I wasn't there, but I know the vote by mail got a little backed up at times, and so the time frame between that first evaluation and then the supervisor's evaluation usually happens within a day before the letter's sent, so that doesn't happen. But it sounds to me like the letter got sent and then the supervisor looked at it and was like, you're okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Way back from the election, there were problems with the staffing in the supervisor's election office.
Mm-hmm.
Have you addressed, or are you addressing the people who were let go and the people who might be let go?
So we'll talk. Yes, I have addressed some of that. There were several staff that were let go, and most of them have moved on. Honestly, most of them have found other jobs. One of them now is working at the clerk's office. One of them moved to Atlanta. Another one moved to Ohio. So they kind of, they moved on. They were all, I made sure they all knew that they were welcome back, but that's a long time to sit and wait. So regarding your second question,
Might be like that.
who might be let go? I know. So I will let you know that David Ballard is no longer in the office, but I'm not going to go into any details on that. And there was actually a handful of others that left before I even got there.
I have another question. How often do they rebalance the districts based on number of people each district?
So the question is, how often do the districts get rebalanced based off of population? And it depends. It depends on the district. There's a census done every 10 years. Pretty much every district is required to reevaluate and redistrict based off of that census. So it happens at least every 10 years. Sometimes more frequently. For us, we reevaluate our precincts every other year. Just by nature, Manatee County, the way it grows, the East County, it needs more precincts. That's one of the things I didn't mention, but it needs more precincts. I know it needs more precincts. The problem is, East County is the hardest place for us to get precincts. It has been for a while, and it's kind of a shift in the way. It's a shift in the way construction has been done, the way government has been done, the way society has developed. And what I mean by that is, if you look in West Manatee, there's a church on every corner. You look at East Manatee, there are churches, but they are huge, and there's not as many of them, and they're all clustered, right? That tends to be they all bought cheap land out there a long time ago, built really large churches, and we use some of them, but there's not as many. And look at parks. If you look at West Manatee, you've got a lot of parks. You got GT Bray. You've got, community centers, things like that. You look at East Manatee, there's not one park in East Manatee that has a covered building. And I mean an enclosed building. They don't build them like that anymore. It costs more money to have an enclosed building. You have to air condition it. You have to heat it. You have to pay maintenance on it, all of that. So most all of the new parks have pavilions, but they don't have enclosed buildings. So the other thing is the community centers, you look at West Manatee, you have a lot of neighborhoods and a lot of community centers, very few gated neighborhoods. East Manatee, it's almost all gated communities. They have some sort of community center perhaps, or clubhouse, but it's enclosed, it's gated. And gated communities are very hard for us to use because they have to keep the gates open. They have to let anybody come into the facility that wants to, and they don't like that. So all of that basically means West Manatee is way easier for us to find precincts in West Manatee than it is in East Manatee.
You have right now the whole county divided up, and each one of the areas has about 35,000 people in it.
It depends on what you're talking about divided up. It sounds like you're talking about county commission districts.
Yeah, that's all.
We don't do the county commission districts. The county commission is responsible for redrawing their own districts. The school board is responsible for redrawing their own districts. That's why the school board and the county commission didn't like each other when the last time it was done, and they did different districts, and then they decided to change their districts. But they're responsible for their own. I wish they would ask us, because I can show you some really weird things that they did that I would ask them not to. But we don't have any say in that. We just have to draw our precincts around their districts. And they do it every 10 years as well. They can look at it more often, but generally they don't want to because it's contentious for them, so they do it once every 10 years. In the back.
Okay. I think I've heard you mean a large number of NPAs. And I just want to get, is that peculiar to Florida, or is there some national average of number of NPAs to registered voters? And if it is a cultural thing in Florida, where are they? Where are all these NPAs? Are they?
So NPAs, is it a? I'll answer it this way. I haven't studied the entire country by any stretch, but I was at a conference last week. It's interesting. I started on the 7th. I had a conference on the 14th. And they did it on purpose. The other interesting part, and I'm getting off topic here, but I promise I'll come back. In Florida, there are 21 new supervisors of elections that were, the first time they were elected was in 2024. 21 supervisors of elections, first time they were elected in 24. Some of them had been appointed previously, but 21 new ones. So there was a presentation that someone did talking about kind of trends across the country, and that's where I was saying earlier, 9 states now, more NPAs are registered than one of the other parties. And it changes depending on the state and the party. So to answer your question, NPAs has risen across the country. Now also understand some states you don't register in a party. There's a lot of states that you just register to vote and you don't declare a party until you walk into the polling place. So some of those they don't know. But generally across the country it has risen. In Florida it has absolutely risen. And who are they and where are they? It's a few things, but it's a lot of the young people. A lot of the first-time registrations are NPAs. A lot of them. And I would say it's a few things. One of it is there is distrust of both parties when they're growing up, and there's very little civics. It's starting to come back, but there's very little civics, and there's a larger, I'd say more than distrust, there's a larger just don't understand how it works and what the parties are and what they mean. It's not really taught in school, or it wasn't. It's starting to come back. My son is in 8th grade. He has a civics class, and that's part of what they go through. They go through the party. They go through the party, the different parties and what they in general stand for. And I don't know. I think every 8th grade class is required to have a civics class now.
7th grade.
Is it 7th grade?
7th grade and 8th grade is, if they didn't give it 7th grade because of schedule.
Right. So 7th, 8th grade, they're starting. Having said that, it's going to be as good as the teacher is, right? And I know that, and I think my son has a really good teacher, but not everybody is that lucky. So I think it's a lack of understanding of how the system works. The other thing it is people coming from other states that didn't have to declare a party. They think that if by declaring NPA, they get to do whatever they want. And there are other states like that. As a matter of fact, I think it's Massachusetts. You declare a party, but if you declare NPA as your party, when you walked into the precinct, you get to pick which ballot you want, which party ballot you want. And so there's a lot of people that think that that's the way it is. So I think it's a factor of all of those. But I will say it's very heavily young people that are driving the increase of NPAs.
A couple questions. So the first one would be, your elected officials, you have to have a calendar, right? So do you preserve James Statue's calendar? Because I'm going to do a records request to inspect the calendar from November 6th to January 7th. And I'm also going to request the emails from the time he lost to the time he got sworn in. Do you preserve those records?
All right, so we are required to preserve whatever records are there. And what I mean by that is, I haven't actually looked to see what his calendar is or was. I didn't go back and look at his email, but different people do that differently. And by that I mean, from what I'm being told, he did most of he almost never turned his computer on. He did everything on his phone.
Right.
Whether or not that information ended up on our official calendar or not, I don't know. But you make the request, and we will give you whatever is there.
My second question is, can you explain to this taxpayer where that $800,000 bonus he got, and are we getting any of that money back?
So I am investigating that now to try and figure out what that was, and understanding that this now covers 2 budget years. The original request was for last budget year, and then he also included that in this current budget year's request. I've gotten through this current year's budget year, and the truth is he increased salaries quite a bit. There was a Lakewood Ranch office that he signed a contract for. But there's a lot of that that wasn't, in this current budget year, that was not spent.
So you know the balance of money, right?
Of that 800,000, I'm not gonna say that I know it to the level that you probably want. But I'd say there's at least 500,000 of that in this current budget year that hasn't been spent.
Or give back,
Right.
right, or give it back.
Um,
Sound like a politician?
Hey, right, no, right. So this is what I'm gonna say, and I can give it back, but there is one thing that I'm considering doing, and I haven't gone very far down this road yet. So
I
if
don't
you're
think
asking,
it's a genuine request, that's what I'm questioning.
right?
I don't think you needed it, if in any way, just want to follow the money. That's-
Absolutely. Their voting equipment.
You guys don't use it anymore? Oh, that's special.
That's different. That's something else. We buy voting equipment, the tabulators, all of that stuff and the general life cycle of that is about 10 years. It was bought in 2015, late 2015. My original intent was to use it through 2026, ask the county commission for money to buy the next set. The company has made some changes that it may be advantageous for us to buy it this year, and that would be what I would propose using the money for that he already asked for is to it's already in my budget. Let me just buy this equipment now and then not ask for as much
Well,
money.
we go maybe twice a year, 10 years. You tell me voting machines have a life expectancy of 50 times.
Of what?
50 times of use?
10 years. That's
No, 50 times of use.
get that.
Okay. One more thing. On the mail-in voting, it might be a good suggestion to collaborate with the tax collector for the 26th election. To stick in there. If you want to vote for mail, you got to request it. It would save you postage and you cover what, 200,000 tax records?
We haven't done that before, but what we have done is put notices in utility bills. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes.
It's very cheap for us to do. We will definitely do that again. The thing about the taxes is not everybody owns a house, so not everybody's going to get that, but it's not a bad idea either. I don't know if they do that or not. They might have rules against doing that as part of their tax assessment. Yeah.
You discussed some of the safeguards you have for mail-in voting. For instance, if somebody moves in an apartment in one place and during the election cycle they move, and nobody's going to know about it, right?
The post office knows about it.
What can they tell you? Can you discuss stuff like that?
Sure.
How easy it is to have somebody's, they did this in Arizona a couple of years ago. People moved, they ended up voting anyway. I mean, the question is, how do they get that ballot? Because nobody's going to, if I'm the next renter, I don't take it to the next guy, I mean, the last guy. But a lot of those people voted. How do they do it? If they didn't request ballots, I mean, how do you discuss how you keep things straight?
So vote by mail, there's a process through vote by mail, and I'll briefly go through that. First is requesting the vote by mail ballot. In order to make a vote by mail request, you have to provide a driver's license or the last four of your social, so that we can compare and make sure that you are making that request. We also have checks in place, automatic checks. If you are making the request online and we start to see a bunch of requests being made from the same location, we can see that as well.
I like just two. That's one too many, right?
No. You and your wife share a computer, or, right? Or a library. We
Three is still a pretty big number, yeah.
anything over 5 usually is considered unusual. 5 is going to start to, hey, look at this, but usually it's a library or a common use computer kind of thing. The other thing that we have automatic checks is, where are these ballots going to? Are they going to, is there a large group going to one address? Does the address look like a P.O. box, right? It's not unusual to send a ballot to a P.O. box. To a P.O. box, absolutely, yes. There are certain addresses, actually, Anna Maria Island, there are no physical addresses. Everything goes to a P.O. box.
It's down delivery. Like down delivery.
What?
Down delivery.
General delivery? No, it's not general. Everybody has their own PO box.
Yeah.
But they don't have a fit. So PO boxes are allowed, but what would be weird is to get a bunch to the same PO box. So there are automatic checks in place to make sure that they're not, someone isn't making a bunch of requests to a specific address. So those are automatic checks that happen. The ballot goes out, you get it. We can track with the post office when it's delivered to your address. And so if there's a time discrepancy in there, we can figure that out. If you call us and say, hey, I never got it, and the post office says we delivered it, we know there's probably an issue. Someone stole your mail, someone got delivered to the wrong address, something like that. But most all of the checks are on the way back when we get that ballot back in our office. Every vote by mail ballot is scanned. It's checked for that you received the ballot. You requested the ballot. You received the ballot. And it's been returned.
How do you know it's been received?
Well, if you,
When you voted?
well, how do I know we received or how do I know you received it? I know what address it was sent to, and then the post office says it was delivered.
Okay, anybody could have picked it up?
But most of the check is on the way back or in our office. Every ballot, the signature is verified.
Okay, that's with a machine.
No.
That's
Well,
a person, I'm saying.
So
That's
there-
a person or a machine?
both. So there is software that banks have created to check signatures on checks that some offices, including Manatee County's, used this last time to check the signatures, and it gives it a weight. It gives it a percentage, basically.
What
And
do you
then-
use? How many do you use for that? What's the number you put in?
I don't know what they
Oh, you
used.
haven't done it yet, okay.
I don't know what they used. We used 80%. 80%
80%
sure. And then that actually is also audited and verified, so that every signature is looked at. This just gives us, it helps us identify which ballots to look at closer and heavier. But every signature is compared by a human being.
Okay, then what happens then? You have more checks, right? How do you know somebody didn't move? And I got this ballot in the mail, but it's not me, so what do I do with it? Nothing. I'll come by, hey, I'll pick that ballot up in your hands. I know the guy moved. Somehow I used to know who moves. Somebody keeps records of when he moves from one apartment to another, right? Doesn't the county do that somehow?
So it depends on how you move, but mostly that is done through the post office.
Okay, the post office?
So ballots are not forwardable, meaning if you move and you have your mail forwarded someplace else to your new address, that ballot will not get forwarded. It gets immediately returned to the supervisor's office.
No, I didn't know, wait, say it again. You moved, I moved, I'm gone. I'm a new person, I live in that apartment now. I get this ballot, what do I do?
You shouldn't have gotten the ballot, because when you move, the person that moved,
On the post office, you say.
the post, I mean, what we found, and it makes sense, is people aren't good about telling us they move, but they're really good about telling the post office they move, because they want their mail. They do the forwarding. Ballots are legally not allowed to be forwarded, so when that ballot gets to the post office, it's automatically identified. This address does not belong to this person anymore, and it gets returned to the office. Yes, Chris. I think it's.
I have questions about the provisional ballot method, because I was a clerk out on Longwood Key, and we had, on election day, we had about, I think, 3 people that actually cast provisional ballots. One of them was, they maybe had a good reason or not, but they probably didn't. But 2 of these people were definitely people that we saw a problem, they saw a problem, they didn't know why they weren't on the ballot, or why they weren't on the forms, so we had to fill out provisional ballot. Well, to this date, I have yet to see anything where a provisional ballot actually counts. And I just checked the records, and there's zeros in all the columns, even though I know this guy should have definitely had a really good chance of having his ballot count. So I'm just curious, you probably didn't have anything to do with that, but do provisional ballots even really count anymore? Because I knew this guy definitely should have counted, but there's zeros in my precinct where they actually counted the ballots.
Provisional ballots, absolutely, there are provisional ballots that count. I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Record that they ballot election record.
So what I'm going to say is the way they programmed the election, they created the provisional ballot column. In the past, we never created that column because provisional, and I'll explain why in a second, provisional ballots, we've always, when they get counted, put them back into the precinct, not into that provisional ballot column. And the reason is, if you vote a provisional ballot, you, Chris, voted your provisional ballot, on election night, there's a set of results for your precinct. And you're the only one in that precinct that voted a provisional ballot, or one of two people, it becomes incredibly easy to see how you voted. So we've always put it back into the precinct column to avoid, to make it harder to figure out how you voted. Why they showed that column, I'm not really sure. I think it was a lack of understanding on how that worked, but I'm not surprised that that column's zero, because it's always zero because we never put anything in it. We've always put it back into the precinct because that's where you voted. That's where the results should be, and it hides your vote. You in the back?
Yes, I was inundated this past year with emails, not emails, but text messages and phone calls. Apparently, my phone number is registered to another voter in Collier County. When I called them to say, can you cross-reference my phone? Some of these were pretty Democrat schemes. Is there a way through your office to cross-reference a phone number to another registered voter to notify them that their number on their voter registration is bogus?
I gotta think about that one. I don't know of a way to search only on a phone number. So you would, for us to do that, you'd have to. No? You can.
Okay, we'll make it such a block. I might not be whatever for next voting season. But yeah, some of these text messages just was very productive.
Having said that, and your situation is a little differently, I can tell you right now, candidates don't get phone numbers from voter registration information that much.
Well, this is people running Collier County.
Right.
So they obviously are, I would imagine, getting their phone numbers from that supervisor of elections.
I doubt it. And this is one of the things I learned as a candidate. There's a lot better places to get information than the supervisor of elections office. It's a lot cheaper, easier, and it's all set up, ready for a candidate to go. And the truth is, the text messages, most of them, the candidate didn't even say, send a text message to this list of phone numbers. They just said, I want to text this group of people. And that company figures out who those people are, what their numbers are, and texts them.
Yeah. I've also been told to don't write staff because then they realize it's a valid number and they'll sell it to 25 million.
I've heard that too. I don't know if it's true. That part I'm not really sure about. I know that the whole, you can block it, but the next one's going to come from a different phone number. Trust me, my campaign did not text one time because I couldn't stand getting them myself. I wasn't going to do that.
So it's really your protections you have to try to curtail some of it.
Not for text messaging. They even,
Probably the same thing.
right, and understand who makes the laws and the rules on this. They're all elected. So they want to make sure that some of the things they did to get elected don't. So even the no-call list has exceptions for political use. So there is no, even if you're on the no-call list, you can get calls. Candidates can call you, and so figure out, I mean, all I need to say is most of that data doesn't come, I mean, what happens is these companies are large, and they get the data from all over the place. They get it from the state,
But
They get this.
They call this person's name.
Understood. It might have been their number at one point in time, but they get that information. They get the state's voter registration information. They buy lists from marketing companies. They buy lists. Have you ever gotten a piece of mail from someone that is like, I won't ask you, I will say, I have gotten mail to my father at my address. My father has never lived at my address.
Well, I brought you a thing about my dad.
Right.
At a private party when my dad to register and he's been dead for 10 years.
Exactly. They buy these lists from marketing companies, and marketing companies are of the opinion more is better. So all I say is what I learned, one of the things I learned as a candidate is a lot of this data does not come from the supervisor of elections office. Of course, you want to make sure your phone number, and if you have the email with us, is correct, but don't blame us when you're getting text messages because we probably didn't provide the phone number.
No, I'm not. I just didn't know if there was a way, if that's my phone number, to check with another voter registration to let them know, because as I remember in my research, it's been a while, the prefix, the area code is the only thing that was changed. The rest of my phone number is identical to this Diane person or whatever for hire.
It's interesting. Yeah.
I think it's a typo, but
It could be that as well. Well, like I said, I hated getting all the text messages too. So, yeah.
kind of weird sound with bad.
Scott, who audits you?
Who audits
To make
us?
sure you do it. Let's say the post office gives you a list of people who moved, and you say, well, fine, I know who moved, and I can get that in the right hands for the right people. They're going to say that, I'll say they didn't move, even though they did. Now you know who's not living there, and if you come back with a signature and a ballot, how do you catch that? I mean, somebody that's watching, you don't do this. Like, who does it?
So, let me answer that a little broader in that there's different types of audits, right? When you said audit, immediately I was thinking financial.
No, I mean.
Right. But I'm going to answer the financial one too, because I think maybe other people might have that question. And the truth is, legally, there's no one that has to audit us. We ask, the county as a whole gets audited every year, and we ask to be part of it. Now, it's not as full of an audit, so actually this year, I'm asking the clerk of the court to financially audit us. Because we actually did the same thing when Mike Bennett came into office. It's generally a good practice. When you have a transfer of leadership, just do an audit, financial audit. Then there's no questions about what may or may not have happened. So that type of audit. Now, what you're referring to is more of a procedural election voter registration.
Who's watching Philadelphia? That's what I'm asking through you, yeah.
Okay. I can't really answer Philadelphia. I know that what we do is we have to file reports with the Division of Elections on certain activities on a certain time frame, and they look at them to see whether the activities look like we did it properly. I have no idea. It's called the Division of Elections.
That's a state, right?
That's a state. Every state has their own laws, their own procedures. I have no idea what Philadelphia's are. Some are very state heavy, like the state dictates everything down to the counties. Others are a little bit more like Florida, like the counties are more independent and get pass information up to the state. So I don't know about Philadelphia specifically, or Pennsylvania, or how their laws are.
Okay, we had the fellow with the digital ninjas or ninja something, whatever his name was.
Cyber ninjas?
Cyber ninjas. He came to one of our meetings, and I asked him some questions. He didn't want to say much.
Yeah.
He's out of business now. And I read the report, though, that the Senate or the House in Arizona made, and there were 10,000 votes from people who moved from one place to another. That didn't look good at all. It's highly suspect. It didn't make any sense. So maybe somebody in that office found out, got the information from the post office and used it the wrong way.
Right.
And the question is, how do you stop that stuff? That's why he has two audits. I mean, that's what the report said. 10,000 votes, they couldn't have got 10,000 votes is a lot. 40,000 votes insured that whole state. And they went to every place that somebody could achieve, and that was quite a few. So if we walked to, you said we don't really have anybody unless they're interested, or, I mean, who has something to state, right?
Yes, we have certain reports on that type of activity that we have to send to the
All right,
state.
is there somebody over your shoulder looking? What do you think? Is that, can somebody cheat? Not you, I mean somebody else.
It would be very hard.
Is it hard?
It'd be very, very hard. I mean, having said that, there are people in the community that are asking for this information. Defend Florida was one of them. They're still around. Haven't seen them too much in Florida, and I hope that's because they think we're doing a good job. But that are taking all of this data and comparing it and looking for people that they don't think should be on the rolls, or they think that live in another state now, stuff like that, and bringing that out. There was an organization, or Eric, I'm not going to go into Eric because we talked about Eric, but there are new relationships between different states that the governor's office is trying to create. So that honestly, that's the biggest challenge we have, is state to state. Inside Florida, it's pretty tight. We know when someone moves inside the state. It's when someone moves into the state or out of the state that the data lags, if it gets there at all. And so that's the relationships that they're trying to create, so that when someone comes in from Ohio, the data gets back to Ohio, remove them from the roll, and vice versa. So those are the relationships that there's still a little bit of
If Joe Jones doesn't tell you all the information when he moves,
Right.
you can't trace him back to where he came from.
correct.
It only has the name and address, it could be anything. And an ID card, that's all.
I mean, and that's why the list maintenance that we do, the activities, we send a piece of mail, and if you don't return it, you're going to get removed from the rolls. It's going to take a little bit of time. There's a process involved.
But that's next election, how about this election here, you know?
Well, and that, I mean, yes, I get it, but there is that process. And also, if we get returned mail, right now, honestly, the post office is our best source of information. It's not perfect, but it is our best source. Yes.
Eric didn't have very many good functions to it, but it did have a good function for doing exactly what you just said, comparing state to state. Do you use any part of Eric to discern if there's any?
So the short answer is no. We're not allowed to. The way it works, when you join Eric, you have to agree to use all of their data, give them all of your data, and use all of their data. And so when they withdrew, and by they I mean the state, this was all decisions made at the state level. The counties were not allowed to make those decisions independently. It was the whole state or none of the state. So when they withdrew, we lost all information from Eric. You all had enough? Well, thank you.
All right. If you don't know, it's because you didn't ask, and most people ask, so you should know. All right? When you leave here tonight, just, chalk it up the fact you're smarter than when you got here. Praise the Lord. All right. Next week,